My name is Josh Griffin. I'm what they call a guardian. I hunt demons.
We're so incredibly rolling right now.
Are we?
Yeah.
Hi everybody, Mike Handcock here, and this is Glen Levy. Welcome to the webinar today, or tonight, depending on where you are in the world. And we're going to be talking about the concept of quantum leaping your life. And what that really is about, it's about fast tracking everything that is going to be happening for you. So things like your wealth, for instance, things like your health are going to be two aspects that we're really going to focus on during the next 45 minutes to 1 hour. Glenn, tell us about health. How are we going to quantum leap that?
Well, obviously we're made up of many different segments. We've got our mind, our body, and our spirit. So health is finding balance, bringing those three elements and finding our homeostasis, finding the yin-yang in our own life. So when everything is in balance and everything's working properly, then our body is running at its optimal level and it keeps us healthy. But the thing is, it's not hard. It's very, very easy, and there are a couple of little tools and tricks, if you will, that will enable your body to be perfectly strong, perfectly healthy, and keep your metabolism burning while you're sleeping. So it means that you can lose weight very easily.
So that's what we're going to be doing with you. You're going to have some tips and techniques to burn some fat, lose some weight. We're going to give you some tips and techniques to create wealth much faster for yourself and really start quantum leaping. But before we do that, I'm going to be back to you in a minute with how we actually deal with the concept of quantum. So Glenn will be back a little bit later, but now let's talk about the senses. Each of us use our senses every day. For instance, sight, you're all watching this at the moment. Sound, we're hearing this. Smell, like we haven't got smell-o-vision yet. Touch and taste, they're the 5 senses, but they're in fact 7 senses. So I guess you could be wondering what the 6th sense is. Well, the 6th sense is intuition. It's that gut feel, if you like. And working with Glenn, I've learned that why we call it gut feel is because all of the little circuits in our hands and our feet all run through this big wiring system, and there's a circuit board which sits about 1 inch behind our belly button. So that's why when we get these sort of pangs in here, it's our gut feel, it's our intuition kicking in. They don't teach you how to use your intuition at school. But for many of us, and myself definitely, if I had been using my intuition for most of my life, I would have made a lot better decisions than I have made using my education and experience. They're backup tools. When you see the most successful people on earth, what they tend to do is they tend to use their intuition first to get into an arrangement, a business deal or something like that. And then what they do is they then go to their education experience, or they leverage it by going to somebody else's education experience, doing the due diligence and everything else that needs to happen at that point there. So that's intuition. That's the 6th sense. But the 7th sense is the big one. The 7th sense is something that I call quantum. And quantum, just like a quantum leap, is that second when you just go from here to here, and it's just amazing. That journey just takes just like a millisecond. And suddenly one moment you're here, and the next moment you're over here, and you don't even know how you got there. Businesses grow in a series of quantum leaps, and so does our life. nothing ever happens in a linear fashion. We tend to go, boom, here, we're here one day, not much happens, and then the next day, wow, we're right up here. The example I like to use, and just have a think about this yourself as we're sharing this, is going to the airport and jumping on a plane. When you want to get on a plane and you want to go to another city which might be an hour or two away from you, the very first thing you do is obviously book a ticket. That takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do that. Once you've booked that ticket, then nothing much happens. In fact, it could be a week or a month or even 3 months before you even travel. So you're just sitting around not doing much at all. Then it comes the day of travel, and what you do on that day, of course, is you pack. And yeah, we know if it's, you know, the ladies might take a little bit longer than us boys to pack, or us frequent travelers like myself who can generally do it in about 5 minutes. But then we got to go to the airport, so we get in a car or a taxi or something, we go to the airport. Then there's the whole check-in procedure. We're normally hanging around, even for a national flight, for about an hour, read a magazine, sit around, wait for the plane. And just that minute before we're due to step onto the plane, what's actually happened? We might have spent hours and hours and hours doing fairly mundane things, not getting any closer to our destination. As a matter of fact, driving to the airport could actually be further away from our destination than when we started back at home. Nothing's really happened, and we've spent all of our time and energy. And the minute that we step onto that plane and allow somebody else to actually take control, boom, we get there in an instant. That's a quantum shift. So, and when we're flying, you know, we're getting served cocktails and we're having a very, very nice time looking out the window. We're not actually doing much at all. So our lives seem to be very much the same. We seem to struggle and toil and do all those sort of things, trying to get to a point whereby we feel we're succeeding. And right at that point, some of us, just as we're about to take that step onto our own aeroplane, we give up. And we say, this isn't working for us. So we go back and we try something entirely different. Whereas if we just trusted, if we just believed, if we'd just done one more thing and allow that quantum shift to actually occur for us. You see, quantum is when the universe just delivers you messages. Let me give you 2 or 3 examples. On our tour last year of Australia, Glen and I were in a restaurant in Melbourne, and we'd been sharing the whole thing about quantum for a couple of hours before that with a group of people from Melbourne. And one of the guys in the restaurant said to me, what do you think I should do with my life? What's quantum telling you I should do with my life? I don't know if you've ever been asked that question, but it's a pretty tough question to be asked by somebody you don't know, and you're going to tell them what you think they should do with their life and you don't even know them. So you can't make any judgment because you don't know them. So instantly what I do is I check upstairs and I go, okay, what's the message coming down? The very first thing that comes to me is always the right thing. So I turned around and I said to this guy, I think you should become a monk. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, you know, I've always wanted to become a monk. That's one aspect of quantum. There's no way I could have guessed that. I don't even know that guy. But by tapping in and allowing the messages and being open to the messages that you receive, because many times we've tried to tap into quantum. You and I have done it all our lives and we keep shutting it off. We go, oh, okay, what should we do? And we get a message, go, no, we can't do that. We get another message, no, we can't do that. So we're turning it off. And we've actually got ourselves in the habit of turning these messages off. If we allow the messages to turn on, the most amazing things occur. So that's the concept of quantum, allowing messages to come down to you which will shift you totally. And when you get those in your wealth and when you get those in your health, you become totally empowered. And Glen's going to share with you a little later on just a few quantum techniques that he's learned to actually shift weight, to shift fitness in a very, very short space of time. So I know you're looking forward to those. Let's consider now you trying to get ahead in this thing we call life. And the thing that is that most of us get stuck doing something that is pretty unproductive. Sometimes it's called a job. We're not that happy about being in that job. We'd rather go do something else. Sometimes we're very inspired by a business we get into, and then after a little while that we're into that business, we realize it's not the type of thing that we want to be in anymore because we haven't tapped into something that's very essential for us to have true wealth. And what I mean by true wealth is not necessarily in a financial sense, but in the sense of freedom of expression, freedom of the ability to actually do what you want and be empowered by it. And that thing that we haven't tapped into is called unique ability. Every single person in this world has a unique ability. That's the thing that we're most passionate about and that we're also the most competent in as well. So let's consider things that you may be doing in your day which you're totally unpassionate about and you're actually incompetent at doing. I used to do my tax years ago, and I'd sit there and try and work out my tax every month and send off the check to the government. It was always wrong. I always got fined. I could never understand how to do it. So in the end, I just stopped doing it. And then after a while, the fines got a bit bigger, so I had to go and employ somebody to do it. And it was like, that was their bliss. They loved the idea of actually sorting out my tax for me. So just because you don't like doing something, somebody else may be absolutely encouraged by the fact that they get the opportunity to do that for you. If I'm doing that role, that tax role, for me, that's very restrictive. It's almost like I'm in chains. I can't move. And there's many things that some of you are doing during your day that's also making you very restrictive as well. But there is a worse area than just being totally restricted by things that you're not passionate about and that you're not good at. And the worst area is being restricted by things that you're not passionate about, but you're actually very good at. And many of you will start to realize, even as I'm saying this, that this shift that's going to occur in your mind, in your body, and your spirit during the next hour is going to be because you're actually going to realize that you're not passionate about doing things and you need to be passionate about doing things. My corporate life was something that I was extremely good at, but not very passionate with. So every day I just went through the motions. I'd turn up to work, I'd do what I had to do, I'd try and work out who I could have lunch with that day to try and waste some time. I'd, get some corporate friends and go and hang out and have a beer with them in the afternoon. And I did this for years and I did my job very, very well. It was unchallenging and unfulfilling. And one day I just realized that I wasn't operating in anything like unique ability. So I had to shift. So I shifted into the third area. And the third area is where you're really passionate, but you've not yet got the competence. It's called developing. And for me, that was going into the speaking, coaching, and training business. Whilst I was a pretty competent speaker, the whole concept of running that as a business, I wasn't yet competent in. But I certainly had a passion for it. And the other thing I had was a passion for music as well. And I was wondering how I could integrate those two things. And then by just actually spending time in that and by doing some what we call hard yards at first, by trialing and erroring on things and just testing and measuring different processes, boom, one day snap, I'm in quantum. And it happened almost overnight. And that's when I came up with a concept of a brand called Rock Your Life. And I sat on that brand because I thought, who wants their life rocked? And then after a while, and a chat with a really good friend of mine, where he said to me, Mike, if Anthony Robbins had that brand, he'd be a billionaire. I decided I've got to do something about this. So I integrated one of my greatest passions, which was music and my ability to play the guitar and be a songwriter, with my other great passion and my competence, which was speaking, coaching, and training. Once those two came together under that brand, Rock Your Life, boom, suddenly I was all around the world. Within 6 months of me having that brand, I was operating in about 10 countries. I was on planes all the time. I was having the time of my life, going around talking to audiences and everywhere from Las Vegas to London. So this is what can happen when you step into this unique ability. For those of you that are starting to consider what your unique ability is, make a list. Make a list of what you're the most passionate about and also what you're very, very good at. If you don't know what that is, ask some of your closest friends or the people around you to help you and start to pull together a list and then look at that and say, how can I turn this into my life's work? Because if you can turn something that you're so passionate about and that you're also really good at into your life's work, just like Glen Levy's done, and you'll see that very soon, everything shifts for you and you create quantum results almost overnight. So the concept of quantum is the seventh sense. And the concept of having and acting in your unique ability is the key aspect of that. When I come back a little bit later on, I'm going to talk to you specifically about a wealth format that I got in a quantum download from some ancient teachings in Greece. It's called the 12 Tones of Wealth. It's a quantum method that will help you establish what's going on with your wealth right now and how to shift that. In the meantime, it's over to Glen.
Hi, so I wanted to explain a little bit about where I come from and what makes me and what makes me tick. Excuse the flamboyancy. But I loved martial arts and still do. And that was my driving force for becoming who I became. But initially it was starting off with the idea of loving Bruce Lee and loving the magic and loving the flair and the flamboyancy of the martial arts. So all the big moves and one little guy doing super kicks and flips and everything. And that for a long time was fantastic. And that was my heart, and I loved the idea and the science behind everything. So before I carry on with the rest of that story, I just want to explain a little part about the human body, and I invite you yourselves to join me on this one. One of my passions with the martial arts is the human body. I find the human body fascinating, what it can do beyond what anyone thinks it can do. But because the body runs like a machine, it has electrical wiring. So along the wires, you have little access points, if you will. Little points where the wires cross, or they come close to each other, or close to a bone, or close to a muscle. And you can press or squeeze or pinch or rub on these points to have an effect on the body. Some of the points are very good at healing people and fixing them, and some of the points are very good at hurting people and doing other types of things with it. But I love both. I love the idea that they can create or destroy, and destroying isn't always bad. Sometimes you kind of need to toss up the earth to make anything new grow. I don't know how that applies to fighting, but bear with me on it. So the first little tidbit that I want to give you is a point in the hand, the Chinese call heigu. It also is large intestine 4, if anyone wants to look it up, but I'll flick up on the screen now where it is and the location. Now, when you reach in to this web of the hand, the bone of the pointer finger and the bone of the thumb meet in this little triangle joint deep into the hand. You need to reach from both sides, from the top and the bottom, and try to squeeze and touch in the middle, and you'll feel a little nodule in there. The idea is slowly and gently add pressure and then start moving your fingers in a clockwise circle. Then you drag down the thumb and drag down the finger. So this is the technique, and obviously I invite you to play with that now and get a feel for it. But what this does is, unfortunately, you're all going to die. It was the dim muck. So cool, it's been fun. Thanks. All right, so that was just for the laughs. But anyways, it is an amazing point, this. It can both heal and hurt. Obviously, if you're doing it to yourself, the chances are it's not going to hurt because you're doing it to yourself. And we'll go into that in a second. But this point is a natural analgesic point. It releases endorphins into the body, and it actually is a pain relieving point. So if you have a headache or a stomach ache, this is probably the best point you can have a play with. Don't do it if you're pregnant, by the way. It's actually a releasing point, so it actually can speed up childbirth also. So hopefully there's no newborn babies out there, and if there are, please call them Glen. It's an awesome name. When you hold on to these points, you're actually giving a signal to the body to release a pulse of energy and release a pulse of endorphins. So your body floods with these, and these little receptors stop the pain response going through as much. But to create more of a head analgesic, once you've squeezed it, you actually drag down on the thumb, because the thumb is representing your head in this case. And then this pointer finger is more to do with the stomach and the colon. So once you drag, you're actually guiding where the analgesic will primarily be. So that's a first little tidbit that I want to give you. Now, back to the idea of pain. When you squeeze this point yourself, you can feel the tension, you can feel the feeling, but obviously it's not a painful experience. But if you have anyone around you now try to get them to press that same spot. Okay, so what this is and how this works is it's the same theory as tickling. You can't tickle yourself. And if you can, that's awesome. You should write a magazine about it because that's new. But the idea is, because we're doing it to ourselves, then it's okay. So our brain is working with us on it, and it says, well, if you're doing it, then surely it's good for me and it's okay, because why would you do something to me that's not good for me? Even though a lot of us do. But because we're doing it and we're accepting it, then the pain receptor doesn't really get a chance to fire because it balances out the equation in its head or in its own CPU. But when someone else does it to you, it's foreign and it's defended against. Now this is what makes the system work. It's the defense that causes the reaction. People aren't hurting you. Your body is hurting itself as a message that something is wrong. So that's what pain is. It's nothing. I'll let that sink in for a second. Okay, good. Pain is not real. Pain is an electrical signal that is sent to let you know that something is wrong or different. So, half the time we've got things in our lives that are very painful and they cause us lots of grief, but they're not real. They're just a signal that something is different or wrong, and anything that's wrong can be righted and can be fixed. But our perception is what guides whether it's painful or whether it's progress. So the idea is when we can change our perception, we can change our experience. The next thing that I'd love to be able to do with you, and it's obviously hard to reach through the camera, is if you use different pressure points on a human body by changing where your mindset is, then it actually changes the experience. And I'd love to invite my friend Mike back to show you this little example. And I love this one because it's great. And I promise not to kill you.
Yeah, right, okay. What are we doing?
So, there's another little pressure point that we're going to work on, and it's just on the inside of the forearm. So if you want to play with it at home, you can. It's basically, if you cut the forearm in half and cut it in a half again, 1 finger width back from the crease of the elbow, right on that quarter line is a little pressure point. So what we're going to do is, obviously, if you squeeze it and put a little bit of pressure on it, it has an effect on the body. A, because of the pain, but also because of the signal that it sends through the hips. And because the body is a machine, the body has a jerk reflex away from the pain before the pain is actually felt. And that's the amazing thing about the body, is the body will do stuff for you as a defensive movement before it gives you a chance to feel the pain, so you know what to be afraid of. It's genius. So all I want you to do, Mike, obviously, is when you can see how this arm here and that point there, there's nothing there. So you notice how it's perfect and everything's flowing, and obviously it's so perfect that I can't even fix it. It's already perfect. So everyone at home, so while you're noticing that, my thumb is about 1.5 inches into that same point on his arm. This point here, Mike. If you look over here for a second, you notice that point there. See, and this is exactly how it works. Good man. And Mike already knows it on too. Good man. So thank you for that.
All right, thanks, Glenn.
He's gonna die. But anyways, the idea is our perception dictates our experience. So in that example, with Mike obviously focusing on the perfection of an area as an opposite to the pain, then he starts to experience the perfection everywhere, internally and externally. And this is the amazing part of it, is because everyone is focusing here, then this no longer exists. It's happening somewhere, but not existing in our experience, so therefore the pain signal turns off. But the minute you switch your attention back and notice again, it happens. So, the lesson here is mankind can only experience that which they can first perceive. Hold on to that little nugget, because that is one of the basis ideas for why I do what I do and why I teach and how we can change ourselves now. If we want to, we can. So obviously, I wasn't always an amazing Super Ninja Master. And the idea that got me started, again, was the flamboyancy, like we talked about before. But it took a while to have a reason why. I knew that I loved it, and that was a good reason why. And like Mike was talking about before, is I had a passion for it. In the beginning, I wasn't that competent, but I had a high level of passion. I loved martial arts. I loved the idea of martial arts. I wanted to live and breathe and eat martial arts. But just because I wanted to appear strong. So that was my motivation. It's not a huge passion, but I wanted to appear strong. And obviously, everyone has a reasoning, and mine was a rocky childhood with a bit of family violence. So for me, in my child mind, I figured that if I could appear strong, then surely no one would hit me, or I would be kept safe because I would look too strong to attack, because that's what I saw in all the movies, is they looked strong so people wouldn't fight them. And that was a lesson for me. It may have been the wrong lesson, but it was still a lesson nonetheless. But along the way, certain things happen and have happened that change the dynamic of the why. And that's the important part, is there's no point knowing what you want to do and if you don't know why you want to do it. Because the what could be here. I want to do this. Why? It could be fun. I'll get more money. But if there's no emotional investment, and this is really important, this is a Bruce Lee lesson, it's about emotional content. If you can place emotion into your why, and emotion into your experience, then you untap and unleash the power that you have sitting inside you right now, and everyone has that. And obviously now, the more you hear me talk, and the more you feel, the more you experience that power, and that's our driving force, and that is our passion, that emotional content to why. So mine was an odd thing, because obviously I wanted to look all big and tough and be able to do all the cool, super crazy moves. And I remember being in the front yard of my house, and people must have thought I had physical Tourette's, because I would spend hours, and I mean this, hours in my front yard throwing staves around and like kicking things and just being like a kid. And I wasn't amazing, but I got better and better and better. And then eventually it became bigger and crazier moves, and like I'd hit people and do flips and all the crazy stuff. And that's what I loved, is the idea and the ideal of the martial artist, appearing to be powerful, and all the flamboyant stuff, which as a child and growing up to about 12, I thought that's what true martial artists were, is they were dancers, essentially. If you could appear to look it, then surely you were it. And I had a little shift. And when I was 12, I had an experience where I'd come home from school, and I had run in and I was trying to find my mum, and I was going to go out in the front yard and practice my martial art moves from the videos that I'd just hired. And I slipped over in the kitchen, and in what turned out to be my mother's blood, because my father and my mother had had a fight. And my father had smashed my mother's face in with the butt of a rifle, and I didn't even know it was her. I essentially recognized her from her clothes, and then trying to hold on to her and call the ambulance and all those little things. And it was a big deal for a 12-year-old. And even now, I still feel it like it's there, and I relive it. But that's how I work. I emote everything, so everything has true meaning and true power. So that changed me. I had a huge quantum shift then. That was a paradigm shift, or it was a quantum shift. My reasons why just burst into being. Before, it was to appear strong, and then I realized that I didn't just need to look strong, I needed to be strong. Because the people that you look up to are flawed. That was a big thing for me, to realize that the people that I respected, my obviously mother and father are the the word of God on the lips and hearts of all children. And that was the whole concept. Is I saw that they were fallible, and I saw the flaw, and I realized that in that 1 second I had to become the hero that I was looking for. I needed to become the teacher that I needed. And then I needed to protect the people that I thought were there to protect me. And that changed a big, big thing in me, and my abilities shot through the roof. Because now I knew why, and I had drive and passion. And obviously over the years, I've had different goals and different whys and everything like this. And now my why is to actually open up to the universe the power that everybody has right now in them. Everybody. And they don't even know it. And everyone can do whatever they want and be whatever they want. And my way is the martial arts. Because I find that by physically showing you how you can be strong by doing nothing, but just by being, by being able to just know and choose, a huge amount of power is released. And that's a huge thing and a huge ideal, because then where else in your life can you apply that same principle? And I'll get my friend Mike up again to show you an example physically of how this works. But you need to know the why. You need to then relax into it.
He's going to hurt me.
You may actually bleed. But once you know why and you know how, then you need to have faith and actually know. It's the knowing that changes everything. If you think, then you're in a state of thinking, and it's all up here. When you know, you know. It's a gut feeling. You know it, and then you are it. It encompasses you, and you just are. So in this example, and it's an odd one, so if you grab a hold of my arm or any arm and try to stop me from being able to pull away, good.
I should have done it the other way.
Sweet. Well, grab me with both hands. Let's go hog wild on this. So obviously, when Mike is, and he's actually quite a strong dude with some good strong hands, obviously I can't pull away from Mike. So yeah, good strong grip. But that's because I'm trying. If you try, you're in a constant state of trying. But if you do, and you're holding on again, and when you just do, and you point in a direction, or he's holding me, and I point over there, it feels ridiculous. I mean, what does it feel like?
I feel very disempowered.
See, but this is how it works, and there is no trick or gimmick to this. When I try, all the energy is locked up in the trying, because I'm trying to pull away. My brain thinks that this is going to be hard, so I make it hard. I go, he's got a lot of force, so I have to match his force with more force to be able to pull away, because that's how we're always taught. But if you just be, and there's nothing to that, like there's literally no strength and no power. So the more you hold, the more loose and relaxed it is, it just slips out. It's like trying to grasp water, and water is a powerful thing. But it just is, and that's how we need to be. And this is a physical example of the mental and emotional ideal. So thank you so much for that, Mike. But the idea behind all of this, and obviously we're going to be learning a lot more of this on our course, is when you start implementing these tools, and we're going to give you a lot of skills and a lot of tools, but obviously you're going to start learning how to apply them later on. When we use our perfection, then we just are. When we know why, and we know what we want, and then we just are who we are, then we can let that quantum come out. We can let our true skills start to just be and become, because we're not trying anymore. The more we try, the more we're in a constant state of trying. So if you're looking at the idea of the secret, or the law of attraction, the law of abundance, or whatever law it is, it all comes down to the same thing, is you are what you know. You experience what you perceive. It's that simple. So, by doing some of the tools that Mike and I are going to show you, you start to physically, so my side is very physical, but you can physically see it happening, and you can physically experience it happening. So somewhere in the mind, it makes it so much easier to know, because it's not a process that you have to figure out where it sits in your head. it's happening to you whether you know it or not. So by being able to do it and being able to see it, and then applying Mike's ideals of quantum shifting and knowing your purpose and all the different steps to excelling in all the areas of your life, when the knowledge that Mike's going to be giving you comes in with the experience and knowledge that I'm giving you, they come together and they meet, and now you are physically experiencing exactly what we're talking about now without having to spend the years in the head, may or maybe not, figuring it out for yourself. So that's what we want to give you. And obviously we're going to go back through to my friend Mike now, but hopefully you got some amazing value, obviously, about yourselves from this, and it's just scratching the surface. And we can't wait to bring more to you. But in the meantime, I'd like to hand you back to my friend Mike, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, we're on, obviously. So sorry about that. I was actually just thinking what I was going to teach you next from our Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later on. Glenn just shared some incredible wisdom there. And if you're looking at that and thinking, well, what does that mean for me? The fact that I now can actually get rid of some headaches, which is pretty handy, or I can break a lock. If you're looking at it just as that, then you're missing the whole point. Because the point here is that in just a couple of little moves just there, and I learned from that. It's actually the first time I've done that exercise with Glenn, because he normally grabs somebody out of the audience, but that's a bit hard to reach in and drag somebody out there. But what I learned through that exercise, even myself, and I've watched that exercise many times, is that I felt totally disempowered by not being able to hold on to the guy when he was just going over there to grab something or going over there to do something else. And for him, he felt totally empowered by just being. See, we're not human tryings, we're human beings. And when Glenn got me to focus on this arm here and basically get it looking like water, and I was imagining water flowing out of it. I mean, there was a 2nd century BC priest called Heracles in the city of Ephesus in Turkey, and he had a saying which was translated to "everything flows." And I was just concentrating on that flowing at that stage, and I didn't realize until he said, "Oh, remember back over here." As soon as I focused over there, I felt the pain again. So where are you putting focus where you're currently feeling pain? Whereas if you just shifted your focus, all that pain would disappear. Is wealth one of those things where you're so focused on having and holding on to my precious, my precious? Are you the golem of your wealth? So let's focus now on a technique that I learned that really came from ancient Greece, which is really about fast-tracking wealth. And I'm really just going to cover the first 3 steps. This is something that we cover in detail at the Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course, whereby we get to work one-on-one with every person there, because this is not a workshop, it's not a webinar, it's an actual course where we get to work one-on-one with people. But I'm going to share the first 3 tips. We're going to put up a slide as I'm doing this, and you'll see here the 12 tones of wealth. And they're the aspects of wealth. So the first 3 are the most important. The first one is your profile. In other words, who are you? Do you actually know what makes you tick? I'm blown away that so many people that I've had in my courses over the years really don't have an idea who they are themselves. As a matter of fact, they have some false idea of who they are because they've been educated and have experience in a certain sector. And because of that, the true essence of who they are is buried very, very deep inside them. And when we're able to unlock that essence of that person, when we're able to get them to discover who they are, then they become a very, very significant person in their own life. Because for most of us, you think about this, when was the last time you actually stared at yourself in the mirror? And I'm not talking about shaving or something like that in the morning where you're constantly looking down and up, or putting on your makeup, boys, but I'm actually talking about when you actually had a physical interaction with yourself in the mirror. Go and do that one and see if you truly understand the essence of who you are. So the very first thing, the foundation steps of the 12 tones of wealth, the first one is your profile. In other words, who are you? And there are 8 very distinct profiles. We're not going to go into them here, but I'm going to ask you several questions. And here's one question I'd love to ask you so that you can actually start to get a feeling of who you are. It's 200 years in the future, and a young couple are out for a morning walk, and they walk through a cemetery. And in this cemetery, they're just having a look at the headstones, and they come across a headstone with your name on it. What's written underneath that? Because this is the only association that they could ever have with you in their lives. They don't know you. They don't know anybody who did know you. They don't know your grandchildren. Everybody is dead. It's 200 years in the future. The only thing they will ever know about you is what is written on this headstone. What is written on your headstone? Take a moment and have a think about that, even write that down. Just as I'm speaking now, write down some of those key words. Because when you attend our Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course, you will actually get to understand yourself at a very, very deep level, both from a perspective of inner spirituality and mindset, which is the areas that I'll be dealing with, and in a very physical sense and understanding how to do some pretty cool things like self-healing. Glen's told you a little bit about his childhood. What he hasn't told you is that he's been dead 3 times and he's been paraplegic twice. So when you start to understand that there are techniques that can work, that can shift the most amazing things in our lives, and that those are things that you can learn very, very fast because they're not complex. None of this is very, very complex at all. So when you can understand that, you'll truly have an essence of who you are, and the world is just going to open up for you. So the first one is understanding your profile. The second one is the area that I spoke about before, which is unique ability. When you really do understand who you are and then put your unique ability into that, then something is actually starting to really shift for you in your wealth. And we add in the third one, which is legacy. In other words, why are you doing what it is that you do? Why? And this is some question that I think a lot of people do struggle with, is their why. You know, why do I go to work? Did you know work may not be the best place for you to actually go tomorrow? It could be somewhere else. Why did I get married? Why do I have a family? Why do I feel that I have to live in this country or this area or this part? Why do I feel I have to be this sort of person for other people? When you start to focus on the why and you start to look at that from the perspective of that tombstone 200 years down the track, because that is your why, that is your legacy, that is what's left, and you add that in with your profile and your unique ability, you have a very, very solid foundation for wealth. And then some of the other areas that we're going to cover in the Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course is getting right to the end of the 12 tones of wealth, and the 12th tone is system. And even within the 12 tones of wealth, there is a system. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you just one slide, which we'll put up on screen while I'm talking, which is around one part of the system. And this slide that I'm putting up now is really about a person who feels that their current network is not serving them. So the system that the 12 tones of wealth has will identify 2 key components that they must work on for a quantum stretch in a particular area. And if we take network, those 2 key components that you must work on if network is the one challenging you is your team, in other words, the people that are around you, and your advisors. So if you look at those 2 components there, the team and the advisors, if you solely worked with your team and your advisors on building your network, how quickly could you get your network from its current state to a desired state? The answer would be very, very fast. So in building this system of the 12 tones of wealth, where we're looking at aspects of wealth creation, and I'm not talking about property, I'm not talking about equities, I'm not talking about business, I'm not talking about cash, I'm talking about true wealth, which is the essence of who you are and how you become what you want to be. And so there are areas that looking at what motivates you, how you deal with challenges in your life, who's advising you, who's on your current team. They're the sorts of areas, how we leverage things other people's time, other people's money, other people's networks, other people's ideas. We're going to go through all of this on the Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course. But if you just take this example here and write these things down, write down these 12 tones of wealth, and ask yourself this question. Out of all of these 12 things that are written down right now, what is the one thing that is holding me back at the moment from achieving a greater wealth? I believe it's probably going to be one of those 3 foundation things that I mentioned before. Your profile, not understanding your unique ability, or thirdly, is not understanding why you're doing what you're doing. If you focus somewhere else, please come back and have a look and truly be honest with yourself, is it one of those 3? Because if you solve that, everything's going to shift for you very, very quickly. So what is the one key area out of these 12 that if I was able to do something about this, then everything would shift for me? So when you have a look at that, just have a look at the different items that are around it. And I'm going to put up a system here now for you on your screen that you can have a look at. And when you see this system, it's a numerical system. So if you simply counted these 12 tones in a circular fashion, so obviously if we started with the profile as being number 1, then number 2 would obviously be unique ability, and number 3 would obviously be legacy. But wherever your one is, start with that as the 1. And then just have a look at the numbers that we're going to put up on screen now. And you will see that a pattern is emerging there for you. That pattern is the things that you must focus on in that order for you to shift that thing in your life which is currently not serving you to the greatest ability. So just simply look at the numbers on your screen and put those numbers against the pattern that you have there, against that 1. So again, if it's profile is your number 1, the next one should be 3, so you'll go straight to legacy. So from that aspect there, have a look at that and identify that for yourself. I want to just share with you one other quantum aspect before we bring Glen back up, and we're just going to do some things then on health, and I'm going to teach you a little bit about what we're talking about at the Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course. The thing I want to share with you is for those of you that are out there marketing yourself. How do you get quantum shifts in your marketing? Well, a little formula that served me very, very well is something called radio. For you to actually improve your marketing and your ability to market, you need to understand this little formula, radio. R stands for rapport, A stands for authority, D stands for direction, I for inspiration, and O for ownership. So let's just go through these quickly. Rapport means that you must spend time building rapport with people. So one of the ways in which you can build rapport with people is by actually talking from your heart and not from your head. We're going to talk a lot about electromagnetism at our course. And one of the things that I've learned recently, it's the work of Greg Braden, is that our heart gives out 5,000 times the electromagnetic signal of our head. So if we think we can think our way out of our problem, we've got another thing coming. If we can feel our way, and if we decide with problems through our heart, everything starts moving. So our heart, 5,000 times as strong as our head. Start using this and start speaking from this a lot more. When you do that, you'll create rapport instantly. Authority is the next one. You must have the authority. How do you have the authority? Well, one of the simplest ways is to write a book on your subject matter. That way you become an author. By being an author, you are seen as an authority. That's worked for me. But the other way is credentials, experience, testimonials is a brilliant way to give you authority for whatever it is that you're doing straight away. D is direction. Direction is where you must take control of a situation by saying to somebody something very simple. Can you turn off your television while we're talking? Could you have a look at this piece of paper for me? Could you take a pen and write this down? By giving direction, you're taking control of the situation. I is inspiration, and everybody wants to be inspired. It doesn't matter whether you're selling water for a living. Look at what's inspirational about doing that. For example, if you are selling water, you know what's inspirational? Is actually we need water to survive. You're actually helping people survive. By you going out there and marketing water, you're actually curing people's health issues. That's inspirational. But the last one, the O in the radio, is the most important. And for many of you listening to this right now, this is the single biggest issue that you will have in your life at the moment. O is for ownership. Are you owning who you truly are at the moment? Or are you hiding behind the cardboard cutout of what you're representing to the world? Ownership. When you truly own something, that's when you will take action. So it's okay for us to be on this webinar talking to you and actually showing you some cool things and discussing some cool information. But if you do not accept ownership, that is something that you want to transform in your life, that you want to improve your mind, that you want to improve your body, that you want to improve spiritually, then everything that we're doing has no credibility for you because you don't have ownership of that situation. When you can give people ownership of a situation, everything shifts for them. So when you're marketing yourself, think of those 5 things: radio, rapport, authority, direction, inspiration, finally, and most importantly, ownership. Glenn, I'm going to invite you back up here now. I want to talk briefly about our course that we've got coming up, which will be happening in March, actually. But before we do that, I want to go through some of the things here in the brochure and get you to give a couple of little demonstrations, because we did some things before, how to heal through acupressure and using concepts that Glenn calls Fa Jing, which is
explosive energy. It's releasing a burst of energy through, Kundalini energy out through your spine, out of your hands and feet.
Absolutely. It's sort of like sneezing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Essentially, when you touch someone and do this in a fighting application, you can electrocute people with your palms, but to use it for health, you're actually resetting. You're sending bursts and impulses through your wiring, and I'll teach you this on the course. But by doing this, it's like pressing a reset. So if you've got a problem, it resets everything and brings everything into alignment again.
So on the course, we're going to be really focusing on wealth creation. We're going to be focusing on health. We're going to be focusing on career. We're going to be focusing on people's giving back, in other words, social responsibility. And we're going to be focusing on freedom as well, because this is all about creating freedom. Imagine just by doing a couple of the techniques, and I'll get Glenn to show you one in a minute, that you're actually going to free up some weight on your body. Would that be a good thing? I think it certainly would.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, even just doing a tour with Glenn and doing some of these things on stage with him, I found by the end of the tour, 2 amazing things happened. One, I was laughing at him because he was trying to put on weight at the time for something that he was doing. He actually lost 5 kilograms just by doing this on stage. And the second thing is I actually went home a lot more toned. So we're going to teach you a lot of these techniques on the Rock Your Mind, Body and Spirit course. But what's a simple technique that we can show people on this webinar today, Glenn, that can help them maybe lose some weight?
All right. So there's a basic principle that makes this work, is our metabolism, or our basal metabolic rate. It's the rate that our body burns energy while we're resting. That dictates essentially, there are other factors, but essentially how we burn our weight and how much weight we can lose. So if we can find a way to increase that rate, then we increase the amount of fat our body burns. It's pretty much that simple. So I started developing different ways of doing that without having to go to the gym all the time, because with my work on films, there's just no time to do anything. So I wanted to be sitting around working out without having to have gear or without moving. So one of the things I want to teach you, and it's very, very simple, so hopefully you can see me in there, but the first thing you do is slowly drift your weight back. That's it, up out of the chairs, wherever you are, in front of the computer. Just slowly drift your weight back into, for this example, your right hip. So you're standing there talking to somebody in a posh party. Then just take the weight off this front leg here, just so your toes are just off the ground. So now you're essentially standing on one leg. And all I want you to do is concentrate on your lower abdominal muscles. It's about 3 inches below your belly button. This is your center, your dantian. This is your energy center in your body. What I want you to do now, and I invite you to slowly start bringing your knee up. As you bring your knee up, I want you to tuck your heel. So, trying to get a bit of angle. Tuck your knee up and your heel in towards your thigh. and slowly lean your body weight back. So essentially this is it. The rest of the movement is like this because it's a movement from Shaolin Kung Fu. But the process of what we're doing is we're leaning out from and drawing back into the center. This is quite hard, as half of you, if you haven't fallen over onto your keyboard by now, will know. But after a while, it becomes easier and easier. And now when I do it, I'll hold it for an hour while I watch TV. So that's how I work out. I'll put on a couple of episodes of Mythbusters and lean out and just sit there and eat popcorn or whatever I want to do. But the idea is I'm no longer slumping and resting. I'm always doing something. So my body's always churning and my basal metabolic rate is always going. And these are very simple, and obviously this is one of many. I've got hundreds of these that I do, but they're just that simple. Doing stuff while you're driving, doing stuff while you're on the phone. And it's trying to make use of the time that you have to make sure that you're losing weight by doing nothing, essentially. So we're teaching more about that on the course.
I think that one's extraordinary. I mean, simply by just doing that, as I'm falling over this time, but simply by doing that, you're actually losing weight. And I mean, I could be standing here doing this webinar with you and losing weight at the same time because I'm still actually standing on one foot right at the moment. So I talked about ownership before, and this is the part where you really get the opportunity to say, do I own this? Do I actually own the fact that I want to be more healthy, that I want to learn some of these quantum techniques? We're going to reward people who take action because this course is $1,650. $1,650. However, a number's going to appear on your screen right now, and for the first 6 of you that take action, we're actually going to make that 50% of that price. So it's going to be $825 for the first 6. So if you're going to go and do that, if you're thinking, now's the right time, because there's a lot of people on this webinar, 6 people will definitely take that action.
Absolutely.
Before we go on, I just want to share that a couple of the other things we're going to be doing on the course, and don't go away, because Glenn's going to do another thing, which I think is just amazing in a minute, and it's something you don't even have to get off your chair to actually do, which is going to really actually help not only get you more healthy, but it's going to help keep you alive as well. We're going to share with you why history may not be what it seems, and you're going to find out the reason you may actually be alive in this day and age. And that's a pretty powerful thing that we're going to be going into as well. So we're going to really focus on the why and the purpose, because once you have that, we know that everything's going to start shifting for you. We're going to go very much into the 12 tones of wealth, which is, as I said, a simple but ancient technique to enhance your wealth and its quantum. We're also going to help you with things like career and things like relationships as well. There are some quantum techniques that you can utilize in those that are really going to shift things for you from a relationship and from a career point of view. But this one is the one I love, Glenn. It's techniques to exercise without going to the gym, the pool, or the track. And we just did that one there, again, standing on one foot. Very, very simple. But the one I want you to do in a minute, and for those of you that have, we've probably already got the 6 people now that have actually come on board, but I'm going to give another offer here. And the other offer is those 6 spots are gone, but for the next 6 spots, the next 6, if you're prepared to take action right now, that price is going to be $1,050. So the first 6 will be gone. That's $825 gone, $1,050 for the next 6. So here's a technique to help keep you alive while you're dialing the phone and booking in for the course. You can watch this as well. So Glenn, it's about really breathing.
Yeah, well, essentially we run on oxygen. Oxygen and water, but the oxygen from the water. So it's oxygen that makes us alive. Without it, we're obviously going to die. But most of us don't actually use our lungs properly. We inflate them to about 60%, something like that, and we breathe very shallow. And that's the thing, is babies breathe all from the center, and the older we get, we start breathing more and more shallow, and then we get to the end. So the more you can breathe, and the better quality breaths you have, and the better techniques you know how to breathe, the longer you live, and the healthier you are, because most illnesses are anaerobic. No, that doesn't mean they're going to have headbands and doing that's aerobic. It's a whole different thing. But anaerobic means without oxygen. So creepy crawlies can't live in an oxygen-rich environment. That's how it works. So the more oxygen you can flood your body with, then the healthier you are, and you just stop getting sick. It's very simple. So One of the techniques that I want to give you for this, and I invite you now to have a little play with me, is breathe in till you can't breathe in anymore. Hold it for a second. Now squeeze these two fingers together and notice how you can breathe in this extra little bit. Isn't that interesting? We'll do that one more time. So breathe out, breathe normally. Now slowly take a breath in. Pinch the two fingers and notice how you can breathe in an extra 30% more air. Isn't that one amazing? And essentially what you're doing is you're rerouting two meridians. You're rerouting your colon meridian back into your lung meridian and increasing the lower half of your lungs capacity and blood flow, therefore increasing its amount of ability to transport oxygen through your system also. But this is something I do while I'm driving, when I'm talking to people, and just getting a feel for it and really concentrating on breathing deep into the center. And obviously you're going to learn a lot more about this on the course, but this is just one of those simple things that you can do now and take that one away with you in the meantime, and notice how it helps you actually increase your vitality. And that's what we're missing at the moment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenn. So let's recap everything. What the course is, it's on the 6th and 7th of March on the Gold Coast. There's a number on screen now. The first 6 places went for $825 for people who take action now. The next 6 places, $1,050. This is a $1,650 course. And I'm going to do one more thing before we close, because I'm pretty sure most of those places will have gone by now for people who are actually taking action. I'm going to recap what we're going to be doing, because we've got an intimate group. This is not a seminar with hundreds of people. We're not aiming for that. This is going to be an intimate group where we can work one-on-one with you for a couple of days, working on some of the techniques here that you've seen and many others that Glen knows from a physical viewpoint. None of them are strenuous or hard. It's not meant to be hard at all. I'm going to be working with you on wealth creation. We're going to be talking to you about purpose. We're going to be doing exercises to really set you free from all of those constraints that you've had in your life, from your mind, your body, and your spirit. We aim to have you set free at the end of the course. We're going to do one more thing, and that is for the next 20 people, that take action. Now that the 6 have gone at $825 and the 6 have gone at $1,050, for the next 20 people, it's going to be $1,200. So take action right now. Come and join us on the 6th and 7th of March on the Gold Coast. We love teaching. We love being around the people who really want to learn. We've got some extraordinary things that we're going to be showing you, and it's going to be really exciting. Thank you very much for being on the call today, and we will see you all later. Ciao.
See ya.